Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy our presentation or discussion about money and well-being. First, I'd like to, I know we have some financial and investment people on. I want to do a limited disclosure. Neither I nor Justin is a registered investment advisor or an attorney or a physician or an accountant, etc. So nothing in this event from us or anybody else should be construed as investment advice or legal advice, tax advice, or especially medical advice. So with that, use your own advisors on all of these things, and I hope you'll enjoy listening to what Justin particularly has to say. More full disclosure, Justin has been a friend of mine and sometime even business partner over a period of over the last 45 years or so. We've actually known each other that long. And Justin has, by way of brief introduction, experiences running the gamut in business and competitive ventures, everything from gambling, specifically poker, and handicapping the trotters, and in sports. He's done boxing and worked with boxers, and he's owned and operated restaurants and actually helped start a financial company that acted as a family office prototype for the upper middle class and wealthy in the mid to late 70s. And Justin, the last time my memory of you in sports, I think we played ping pong, and I had a very difficult time, I think, getting even 1 point. Justin has deep experience in human behavior. I call him an iconoclast and a pioneer in risk-taking, finance, and even competition. He also has he didn't ask me to mention this, but he has a really entertaining and eye-opening autobiographical book called Just in Time. Now, we're here to discuss money or well-being. Can't we have both? And Justin, if you'd like to add some things to the introduction, please do that. But I want to start with the big question, money or well-being, can't we have both? But please take some time to finish your introduction if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like to finish your introduction because my regard from you from the first time I met you was sincere. I thought you were diligent and well-meaning, and most importantly, a very nice person, and just a good person, which is not frequently crossed paths with in the type of ventures that we've been in together. So I met you over exploring the idea of meditation, and that was certainly interesting. And the two of us agreed that there might be some value in finding a synthesis between business and commerce and money making and spirituality. And I don't mean spirituality in terms of a religion or God. I mean spirituality in terms of the elevation of the human spirit, which is spirit for exploration, risk-taking, adventure, humor. And we started this financial consulting business many years ago, you and I and a third partner who was an attorney, to see if we could create a synthesis between those two things. And we, as Leonard Cohen said, we did some good, we did some harm. And we made some money, we had some fun. And I really have kept track of your undertakings through the years, and we're impressed by the chances that you've taken and the things that you've done in this country and outside of this country, and also the ethical standards that you've adhered to, which I respect probably more than anything.
Thank you. I guess just by way of further introduction, short introduction on myself, is people might who have never met me before, or heard me speak, or know anything about me. I have written 2 books, one on um, venture capital for precious metals mining, and the other on investing at the cutting edge of science and technology, and actually gold mining and biopharma and the cutting edge of technology still figure greatly into what I spend my time on, as well as Bitcoin. So thank you for the kind and maybe we can move on with that first, the big question, and start from just kind of a general overview, Justin, of money or well-being. Can't we have both? And maybe we can start it with a general overview and work from there to more specific things. And if people have questions, please send them in on Facebook or Zoom, or any other way you have to get us a question, and it'll come to me and I'll be able to repeat it to Justin.
Okay, so let's see if we can address the generality of the question, because if we have certain really basic human qualities that we recognize are of value, then I think that the synthesis of business and commerce and making money are possible. I think if we have been so corrupted that we recognize that making money is really the ultimate of undertaking and accomplishment, I think it's a very challenging for us to create a synthesis. But saying that, I do think that everyone has within inside of them the desire to be a good human being, to be a peaceful human being, to be an introspective human being, to be a calm human being, and not necessarily to have to go up and down with the winning and losings that are by the nature of life always in front of us, whether it's in relationships or business or health. Shit happens, and there's nothing that we're going to do to alleviate or alter that. So if we recognize that that's the case, I have a basic standard that what we rest the weight of our lives on is really going to predict the experience that we have. So if we rest the weight of our lives on getting wealthy, if we rest the weight of our lives on winning, on that kind of outright success, not that those things aren't possible or valuable or worthwhile, but to actually rest the weight of our lives on those things put us in a position where we're going to have pain, because every time, well, let's talk about it mathematically for a moment. You know, I have a history of playing poker. I grew up playing poker. I, in fact, learned meditation and poker about the same time, and you can imagine which one won. So which one won out. So I have a history of that, and in poker it's very clear who wins and who loses. But even if you're an excellent player, and there are hundreds of excellent players, there'll be time when you have a winning streak, and there'll be a time when you have a losing streak, and there'll be a time when your success is moderated in between those two places. But if your life experience and your happiness and your sorrow goes up and down with the winning and losing, whatever it is you're investing in, whether it's gambling or the gambling that people wear coats and ties to do, you're definitely going to find it challenging to have a peaceful life. So the answer is yes, there is a potential of synthesis, but it's not so easily found.
Justin, I'm curious about um, a little more detail, if you can share it, in your own personal experience early on. Um, so you had experience with fear, anxiety, stress, etc., like we all do. And at one point, you had those things related to business or money or investing or in running a business. Um, when did you realize that, and how did you realize that you could do better at handling the difficulties that arose? And what do you see as the first important steps that you took, maybe even prior to meditation, to achieving some balance?
Yeah, I think the perspective that's needed to achieve that balance is probably even a precursor to meditation, because every human being is capable of perspective of some kind. It's only when we really get buried in the details of the darkness do we lose the opportunity for perspective. And it also helps to cross paths with people who have perspective that can call your attention to, hey, this is serious, but there's other things that are more serious. And I think I was good. I had the good fortune to cross paths with people who had that perspective, who had a perspective of the importance of family, the importance of enjoyment, the importance of humor, and the importance of good friends, and also the importance of having other activities that one loves or really likes, whether it be sports or some kind of fun or other. And I think I was fortunate to cross paths with people that had those valuations, so that it never came down to that if my restaurant had a rough space of a week or two, that I would start thinking, well, it's all going to go downhill from there, because there were so many other things in my
For
life.
clarity, this is pre-COVID.
Yes, this is pre-COVID. Yes, yeah, all of it is pre-COVID. This is a whole different bunch of rules now and a bunch of perspectives needed, but are still available even now, because the human spirit is not affected by COVID. The human body is definitely affected by COVID, but the human spirit is not. It's we who affect our own spirit, not the external bacteria, or even the internal ones, viruses. So I think more early on in my life, even in my teenage years, I tried to do different things, tried to discover what it was to be an explorer through traveling, through trying different things. And really, I fell in love with the exploration of human life. And that was actually a transition for me between commerce and business and uh, all the things that one can do where there's winning and losing, that I developed really a passion for discovering what it was that made people tick, and what it was that made people, how people make decisions, and how people regret their decisions, and how people get scared of their decisions, and the whole area of fear and trepidation and loss. And so I made a transition from studying how to make money, and how to and numbers and finance, and really even gambling, to the study of human behavior. And once that took me, I really found my passion. My passion was to explore that study, and gravitate toward people who also had the love for that exploration, and that really became my life. And even when we got together and set up that financial consulting business, which was some years later than that even, uh, I had a very strong pull to work with people who had that perspective as well. And if you hadn't had that perspective to some degree, that experimental attitude, I don't think we could have done that, because we clearly didn't get in business to get rich. We, if anything, we got in business to have fun.
Right, right. Um, you talk about exploration and risk taking. And over the past couple of years, one thing I've noticed when I've heard you speak occasionally is a direction, it seems directed almost more towards young people, let's say pre 30, maybe even pre 20, to encourage risk taking. And I know you're not talking about hanging off mountain cliffs, um, but this has something, I think, to do with exploration of the human condition that you've done in yourself, about yourself and your own humanity, but also in looking at other people and how they are dealing with their own insight and humanity and condition. And where is that balance? And can you speak a little bit more about this, what I would call kind of external risk taking? It might not be hanging from a mountain. It might be, asking the girl out that you were never going to ask out. It might have to do with, learning how to play soccer when, you had never kicked a ball in your life. I mean, can you talk about the importance of that risk taking that you're talking about and where it really applies?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, my experience, my view of studying the human condition is, if a person doesn't use themselves uh, in addition to their study of other people, if a person has a clinical view of studying that doesn't include themselves, they are going to bypass really a treasure trove of information, because uh, wherever I go, there I am. And all the subtleties that are alive in me are ones that I can be aware of more than anybody else can be aware of, because they're happening inside me, whether it's in my head or in my heart or in my body. So I have included myself in the study uh, uh, really as a primary subject. And through that study, I have found that life is really presented to us in stages. And that early stage, which really I can't put chronological numbers to, because some people dwell on that stage for so long and sometimes their whole lives. But in a sense, that early stage is a stage of exploration of what's out there. Get out there and take chances and learn things, and make mistakes and look foolish, and travel and learn different languages. And I don't only mean languages like French and Spanish. I mean languages like the language of sports and the language of business and the language of relationships, and learn that and be exposed to that, and be bold and take those chances. And that stage of life is really for that. And people have come to me to learn how to meditate or to explore some kind of inner spirituality. I pushed them back out consistently, because I recognize that a young person trying to circumvent the challenges of ordinary life will frequently go to the spiritual world or to the religious world, and I think it's premature.
Kind of
So
like an escapism?
yes, I do think that. And so I've found that's very much the case. And then there's repetition, which happens if a person has really boldly looked at life. There's a phase of repetition where one can actually recognize that they've done that before. Maybe they've done that in another country or in a city, and done that with people, with some people. I mean, how many times can you get married before you know what the marriage is about? How many times can you start a business before you know what a business is about? How many times, you get to know that, yes, there's no reason to put this aside, because it's interesting and it's entertaining. And it's a nice way to spend time, or an adventurous, interesting way to spend time. But it does get to be repetitious, at which point a person can, if they're cross paths with something that introduces that influence to them, look for something deeper. And that something deeper doesn't really require a person, in my view, to leave life. In fact, I think life is so varied and amazing. To leave it for some kind of a seclusion or escape is really denying the incredible gift of having a human body, and having all the forms of entertainment and interest that a person can have in life. But to live life with not only an external focus of accomplishment, but some internal perspective. And that internal perspective is what really creates the balance. It's more like if we were well above us on the earth and looking down, for whether it's from a satellite or, it looks different. Every astronaut has come back with stories about our actual size, and how do we take ourselves seriously, and how do we start wars, and how do we get so upset and freaked out and fucked up about things. How does that possibly happen? We're so small, we're so frail and so vulnerable. How is it that that could possibly happen? But then from the view of right here, and not from the satellite and not from the space capsule, it looks like everything is important. And that can change, and that perspective can be there. And we can, I wouldn't say play big money games like it's Monopoly, because Monopoly is playing with imitation paper, and the big money games are played not only with negotiable instruments, but also with people's lives. And so we can't say they're the same, but they're not as different as we put them forth to be.
You know, I have an old friend who's fond of saying, the situation is hopeless, but it's not serious. And another friend, a mutual friend of ours, our old partner, who was always fond of saying, when you talk about the size of the world, he used to say, we're specks tinier than the specks of dust on another speck of dust spinning through an endless universe. And yet we think we have such importance. And sometimes it just takes realizing that, whether you're on the moon looking back or whatever, to get a little bit better perspective of who we are and what we're about, at least from one point of view,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say. The idea of meditation, which you spoke about briefly, and I think that for people, in whether they play financial roles in their day-to-day life or just are occasional investors or whatever, there's this thing called FOMO, the fear of missing out. And then once they're in let's say a stock or a bond or gold or whatever they're invested in, there's the fear of being in. They have the fear of missing it and the fear of dealing with being in it. And this kind of anxiety. Now, so we know that we can deal with stress and anxiety through a lot of different ways. I mean, for some people, it's just getting better sleep, exercise, a better diet, whatever. You mentioned some things that are, short of meditation. Where do you think that trigger is? And you spoke about it in a general way just now. I know you did. But for you, let's say, maybe we don't have to be so hypothetical. I know in my life story, there came a point where I just said, I want to know something different and something more. Where did that arise for you, and how did that happen for you? Which I would say probably is the thing that made you go, I'm looking for something. I don't know if it's meditation, but it's something way, way different than pointing my senses outward, my sight, my hearing, my tasting, my feeling, all outward. And where did it trigger for you, and what triggered it to go, maybe it's something I haven't found that's inside?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I do have memories of that kind. I remember realizing that my trepidation in those areas that you talked about of being in or being out, and when to get in and when to get out, and success and failure and winning and losing, was, I realized it was very much connected to how I look to other people. And uh, I looked how it looked self to do well, but very much less than my image and my reputation and my feeling of embarrassment of making mistakes and looking foolish. And once I realized that, I recognized that there was something distorted there, and uh, and that if that could possibly be diminished or maybe even removed, would my feeling of anxiety of how I looked be different, because it only really related to how I looked to myself. And so I undertook the study of how these negative feelings existed in me and what really sparked them. And was it really other people that sparked them? And were really other people involved? And I listened to music and read poetry and read books. And they led me to understand that most of our anxiety comes from our image of ourselves, and this burden that I call the gorilla on our back, not the monkey on our back, but the gorilla on our back of self-image. If it can be tackled even in small ways, and minimized in small ways, or at least diminished in small ways, then those feelings of anxiety would decrease. And so I developed some tools to use for myself, and then after developing them for myself, I found other people who were willing to try them, and it seemed that they were really successful in shining a light on this idea of self-image, and how an incredible a position it took in good feeling and feeling good and feeling bad, and also how incredibly important it was in the world of blame, whether it's blame on how something went outside of myself or how somebody acted on outside myself. I really revamped through my study of behavior those attitudes, and subsequently the anxieties that you're referring to decreased, because uh, I recognized so much was dependent on how I looked at how I was looked at by other people. And what I also noticed was that it was very much a male thing, that women really wanted to be smart and men wanted to look smart. And when I recognize the difference, I recognize also that there's no reason. This is not genetic. This is learned, because we because we learn we have to be strong, and we have to be superior, and we have to be knowledgeable as men, and we have to take care of things. And that has changed through the years. But for a lot of people, that experience of burden has not changed, and so much so that if I can say one more or two things about it, that we've also began as men to look at responsibility as a burden, when in a way responsibility can be a great pleasure and great joy, but it has, through our programming, become a burden. And but for me, it is no longer a burden, because of that study that I made, and really recognizing that embarrassment is is as much a little death as death is a big death.
Right. Justin, I have a question came in, and I want to encourage people who have any questions for Justin to please send them. I do have one here I'm going to read. And this question came in. So I've heard people talk about manifesting money, like being able to have money come into their lives by having an intention that it be so. Is there anything to this or that type of thinking? Does it call up a part of ourselves that can do that? That's the question.
Well, I, I do believe that human beings have incredible capacity. I believe that human beings have also denied their incredible capacity and limited themselves through influences from that begin with parents. You should be good at one thing, or you can't do this, or you can do this, or compare yourself to other people. You're not as good as them. You're better than them, and all. Not only that comparison, but our cultural comparison has caused us to limit ourselves both in our intellectual capacity because of brands like your IQ is this, so you can do this, and your IQ is that, so you should be doing that. And I have that experience because I skipped some years in school when I was, in grade school, and I was told, well, you're good at math. You should be an engineer. You should be a scientist. You should help build atomic bombs. So those weren't the words, but that was the idea. And you shouldn't write poetry, and you shouldn't write novels, and that's not for you. Art is really not for you, but this is for you. And I bought it. I bought the stories, as anybody else would buy the stories, because those influences, not only through individuals, through our culture, is so strong. But I've found that it's not the case, and I've worked a lot, and I value a lot the different capacities of human beings. That the human body is an incredible gift, and has capacities that are not yet. And the human spirit is a human gift, is an incredible gift, and has not been unlocked. It's basically been obstructed. And that if a person has that desire to make money, they have to pretty much forget about everything they've been told they can't do, or you can't really do this, or these are the rules, or this is what can be done. Now, we all know the icons that we have, and the heroes of that particular world, the world of making a fortune, have not followed the rules. They've gone their way and
You're talking about the Steve Jobses
yes,
and Musks and
right.
people like that.
They've been creative, and I don't believe that creativity is limited to a few. So my story would be that if you have that sincere desire to make money, then go for it. Go for it. See what is possible, and avoid the no's. But certainly take advice and listen to people who know things and have experience and have experienced, and collect that information. Listen, I became a spiritual teacher, and I became an author, and I've written books, and I've had meetings, and I've traveled around, and I started a social work organization that's gone around the world and built things in third world countries and like that. And nobody ever gave me permission to do those things. I didn't have the acceptance to do them. Something I really wanted to do. I looked into how to do it, and I found other people that had that interest and that didn't feel that limitation. And it's not because of any brilliance. It's not because of anything but the desire. And I know that's true for Darrell as well. I've heard stories about Darrell and getting involved in pharma business, and getting involved in foreign countries with stock exchanges and like that. And it sometimes the things are successful and sometimes they're not successful, but you always gain by taking the chance, especially if they're knowledgeable chances. So I'd say very simply, if you feel the desire to make money, not everybody told you you should, because you have to figure out what you should do. But if you really feel that that's something that you're moved to do, then you should go for it.
I feel a little bit compelled
And
to.
let Darrell be an investor, especially if you're a woman.
I feel that maybe we missed the mark a little bit on the specific question. I think the specific question was more focused towards a kind of um, this is going to sound like I'm denigrating it, I'm sorry, but kind of like a magical thinking, like holding the thought of money or of great income or something like that, holding it in your mind and that acting as a magnet, attracting it to you.
Yeah, I can answer
And
that in one word. I have not seen that to be the case.
fair enough. Okay, now I wanted to share, and while I'm sharing this sort of silly story about a time when Justin gave me a important lesson about money. I don't even know if he remembers it, but while I'm telling this very short story, please send any questions you have in. So let me know if you remember this. We were having lunch. Our other partner wasn't there. We were having lunch at a restaurant, and I was taking a long time with the menu. And you said to me, well, why can't you make up your mind? And I said, I'm between the hamburger and the steak sandwich, or maybe it was a hamburger and a lobster roll. And you said, well, just get one. And I said, well, I want the lobster roll, but it's $4 more than the hamburger. And you said to me, have you ever figured out what amount of money doesn't mean anything to you? And I said, no, I've never thought about it. He said, you might benefit from thinking about that and coming up with a number. I think I went to you the next day and I said, the number is $6. I mean, this is back at a time when I had no money or anything. And you said, well, good. So it's $6. So maybe you could practice never thinking about something that is less than $6 again for the rest of your life. And I took that seriously. I never looked at a menu again and thought about a $6 difference. And I practiced that until this very day. I practice that every year or so. I look at what really doesn't mean anything to me anymore. It's not $6 anymore, thank God, but it's some amount of money. And that amount of money I don't think about. If I spend that amount of money in a day or a week or a minute, I never think about it. And it's been of great benefit because it eliminates some of the jungle that's in my brain.
Right.
So thank you for that. I hope we got some questions while I told that. Do you remember that at all?
I do remember.
All right. All right. Good. Now, I have a quote of yours. I have a couple of them, recent quotes. And I'm at least going to read one of them to you, and maybe you can explore a little bit more what you meant by what you said. And it's
Okay.
something that you had written over the past couple of months. You said, not seeing ourselves as we actually are, but how we would prefer to see ourselves cannot be aligned with the experience of inner peace, because that distorted view has to be maintained by deceiving ourselves. And self-deception requires lying, and lying causes stress.
Right. Is that not clear enough?
I know, fair enough. I mean, no, you're right. It it is. It's to me, it's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can try to see it from a specific point of view. The self-deception I see in my personal life, especially in others. I see self-deception related to people's competence and their abilities. So they might say something like, oh, I know a lot about Spain. And you'll ask them if they've ever been to Malaga or something, and they go, what, where, and then you you have to recalculate. Well, this person thinks they know a lot about Spain, but they don't know that Malaga is a city in Spain. Let's find out a little more. And sometimes you find, if you play this game, you find that people are actually way more incompetent than they think they are. Much more to the point, they don't know what they don't know. So they have stuff that they know, and they have some stuff that they'd like to learn that they know they don't know, but they often don't even know what things are on the list of things they should learn. And so they don't know what they don't know. And this manifests in the financial and investment and the business world, whether you're an employer or an employee, whether you're running a business or working at a business, whether you're a stockbroker or being talked to by a stockbroker. I see these things all the time. Any
Sure,
further comment on your end?
I can say something about that, especially in terms of a number of the people that are watching this discussion we're having, because if you have a view of yourself as an investor, it should be a clear view of your capacity, not only your knowledgeability, which is relevant, but your temperament. You should know your temperament and be honest about it, because there are, I grew up, or in my younger years, I was involved in gambling in terms of horse racing and card playing and like that, is a very short term. A horse race lasts for 2 minutes, a minute or 2 minutes, and then it's over. It's a gamble, but it's over in 2 minutes. And in order to feel okay about that kind of gambling, you have to feel okay about winning and losing in a minute or a 2 minute period of time, which is can be traumatic for people, as opposed to investing in something that a gamble that takes a number of years, because it's all gambling. The gambler is, as I said, the gambler is without the ties and gamblers with the ties. So the ties, as in these ties. So a long-term gamble is you have a chance to recoup. You always have a chance to recoup. Well, maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll come back, whether it's a business investment or a securities investment. Maybe it'll come back. You have a longer time. If you go to a casino and you put some chips down on a number on the roulette wheel, you're not even going to get the minute and a half that you got at the racetrack. But in Las Vegas, some years ago, there was an idea to build a racetrack, and it never really materialized because people wanted that faster action. They wanted to be able to decide to win and lose in a minute or a minute and a half. So knowing your temperament is really important, and being honest with yourself about it. If you recognize that you really have trouble pulling the trigger, whether it's to buy or to sell, whatever the opportunity is, and you agonize over it, there's nothing worth agonizing over. You get one life, and agonizing is not a way to spend your life. Yes, it's nice to win, and it's not so nice to lose, but agonizing is definitely not required. So the idea of knowing your temperament, in my opinion, is of extraordinary importance, and self-honesty is part of that. Also knowing your ability to assess something. So your ability to assess, do you need advice from experts? Are you an expert yourself? How much of an expert are you? Are you an expert because you read somebody else's newsletter and now you're passing on that information that expert had? Or was that person even an expert to start with? No offense to any of the newsletter publishers that we have listening, maybe, but there are experts, and there are people who are just repeating what they've heard before. So it's being honest with yourself and really knowing the nature of your temperament and your capacity to know really what's happening. I if I can go on a little more, this I know that you're very knowledgeable about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and I'm certainly much less knowledgeable than you are, but there's something that I do know about it, since I know about horse racing and gambling, is that if you think that you're buying a cryptocurrency and you're owning part of something, you're deluding yourself. You're owning part of a bet. Now, it's a bet in which you can make a good deal of money, but it still is a bet. And it's a bet that lasts a lot longer than 2 minutes. So you always have the hope, if it goes down, that it can come back up. But you're not owning anything any more than if you're betting on a horse race. You're owning part of the horse. You're owning part of the betting on that race, and when it's over, it's over. So actually knowing that, and knowing that you're gambling on something that you don't have a partnership in, you're betting on it like the longer term bet, because you're dissatisfied. You don't like Las Vegas or horse racing or those short term bets so much. If you're honest with that about yourself, sure, you can gamble and you can make money. Maybe you can make a lot of money. You could probably also lose. And there are more and less conservative ways that you can even invest in that. But that addresses also the self-honesty of what you actually are doing. If you support somebody, whether it's a relative or you're a venture capitalist, in starting a business, you recognize that you're gambling, but you also like the idea of what you're doing, and you like the idea of what they're doing, and you have some honesty about the possibility of winning and losing in that undertaking too. So I consider self-honesty a tremendous asset for any of those characterizations, whether you're an investor or a speculator or whatever level you are, venture capitalist, that's important.
I can speak a little bit, thank you. I can speak a little bit to the temperament issue that you brought up, because in the 70s, I started along with a partner who was a programmer. I started developing trading strategies and trading methodologies and systems. And by the late 80s, early 90s, the software had gotten so good and the data had gotten so voluminous, even in 1990, 1991, that I personally could develop these systems and backtest them over, 600 years of tick data spread over 30 different commodities or currencies or metals, whatever. And what I found was that I had systems that consistently made 150 to 300% over a 3 to 5 year period, and I wouldn't use them. And people would say to me, "Well, you have something that 95% of the time shows an extraordinary return over 1.5 to 3 years." And I would say, "Yeah, but do you see how it gets there?" And I would show them the chart of the ups and downs of my equity. And we have something called drawdown in money management, and drawdown is the from a high to the next low before it comes back to the high and the previous high and exceeds it. That drawdown period can be long or short, and it can be tremendously large. So the example I use sometimes is Google. You look at the price of Google today. Well, not that long ago, it was $8 a share on its way to where it is now. I know that I could have never held it. It had multiple 80% plus declines. I'm not a person who can suffer through 80% declines. I'm a person who, if it moves 5 to 7% against me, I'm flipping out. So I am in systems. I developed a bunch of systems that show much lower returns over long periods of time, and can even have 7 or 11 consecutive losing trades. I'd rather have 7 to 11 losing trades of 2% each to catch, the one trade that makes 50 or 60 or 70% than suffer through these massive declines on the very good odds I'm going to make a lot more money. I just can't bear it. And when I realized that I was a person who couldn't be that person, everybody says, let your profits ride. I can't do that. I can't give back. I cannot give back a big profit. I I would rather lose the opportunity to make money than see, what I'll just pick $1,000 profit turn into $150 profit. I can't do that. So I get it, and it took me a long time to realize that. I started trading when I was 13 years old. I developed these systems and finalized them in the early 90s. And really by about 1991, 92, I realized uh, temperament is very important just to avoid pain.
Yeah, that's a great story. Very practical story. Yeah. I thought of something while you were talking that that reflects uh, temperament as well, and I think I learned it the first time I went to Europe. I left. I was in New York, and I was very involved in the life I was involved in, and it became a little tiresome and boring and repetitious, and a little bit illegal too. So I decided to go away, and I went to Europe, and I spent an extended time there. And was when it was time to come back, I was a devout New Yorker. I lived my whole life there, and it's New York is in a way a religion in itself, or was at that time, probably still is. And I thought that where am I going to go when I was going to come back? I was in France for a long time, and I thought, well, why would I go back to New York? The only reason I would go back there is because I started there. Because in a way, I had so much into it and that I would go back there. And I realized that that was a mechanical idea, that really the more relevant question was that if I could go any place I wanted, where would I go? Not going back to some place, but going on. And I thought I can relate this also to think something as simple as owning a car and having to repair and having to repair and having to repair. And at some point, one decides, well, it's not worth repairing. But the other side is, but I have so much into it. And of course, this is the way investments are also, that people become attached. I have so much into it. I can't give it up. I have so much into it. Now, you found a way to contend with it, obviously, because of your temperament.
Right.
But people very frequently stick with something because they have so much into it and don't realize that whatever they have into it could do better someplace else. And
Right.
there's no
Opportunity
reason to go
lost.
down with the ship. There's no
Yeah,
reason to go down with the ship.
that's right.
It's something like that. And the whole idea of the freedom of recognizing that that having something into it isn't necessarily the way to go forward. And that applies to a lot of things. That applies to business. That applies to relationships. That applies to human endeavors. That what would you do if you could make it all up right now for yourself? What would you do? Where would you go? How would you be even? Would you be the person you were before? Would you be a different kind of person? So that you're not necessary, but I have so much into it. I've spent this my whole life building this person that I am myself, and my reputation and my image, and I have so much into it. How could I possibly make an alteration? Well,
Right.
I made an alteration, and I'm glad I made an alteration.
Right. You mentioned how many things I've done in the financial services area, from registered investment advisor to private mutual fund manager to hedge fund manager, venture capital, private equity, all of those things. And people say, oh, you must know a lot about everything. And as much it has to do with, well, I got a little bored doing that. I wanted to do this to seem more fun. And I'll go off and just change whatever I'm doing, found a new company or whatever. And I don't know.
I gotta find my
I really don't know if that's me, or if I was just born bent that way, or how much my internal experience has freed me from maybe caring so much about what other people think or whatever. We have another question from a listener. Let me get that. Um, Justin, how do you imagine your meditation spirituality directly relates to your financial business success or successes? And why are some people financially successful and others only spiritually successful, if that's a thing? Or are they really not related at all? Meaning someone can be one without the other, and it doesn't really matter other than maybe lifestyle and life quality.
Right, it's a good question. I think first we have to define the idea of financial success, because financial success means you're at peace with where you are. There are a lot of different
Exactly.
levels of financial endeavor, and there's really only one level of feeling okay about it. So that we have certainly had experience and heard about lives of people that have made a lot of money and have had a lot of success, and their feeling of accomplishment, their feeling of inner peace, their feeling of okayness is not existent. So they feel that all they have to do is make more and have more success and have more reputation. So it's not so much that the inner focus can make a person feel better where they are, rather than feel better really leaning their life on something other than that financial success. And it could even be that you have a simpler life. You know, I was a big city person, and now I live in the country. I couldn't at that point have pictured myself living out in the woods in the country. I live in a beautiful place and I live in a nice house, but it's out in the country, and I forego a lot of the content activities and the noise of the city, and I feel okay about it. I haven't given it up, but I feel okay about it, and mostly I feel okay about it because I have pursued this path of finding something else to lean the weight of my life on. So maybe I could talk for a minute or two about meditation, because I teach meditation, and I've been
Please.
meditating for years and years and years. And I would suggest that anybody who recognizes that they talk to themselves almost nonstop should start off by finding something of value to talk to themselves about. So if you talk to yourself about money, or you talk to yourself about what you worry about, at least the first step is find something to talk to yourself about that's pleasant and that gives you pleasure. Things you've been, things you've done, things you'd like to do, things that give you pleasure. That's definitely a step in the healthy direction toward meditation. Now, if a person can find some kind of simple relaxation exercise where they're not circulating thoughts in their head nonstop, and not restless, and not driven to activity for even a few minutes a day, I think that's a step in the right direction. I think that we should maybe not use the word meditation so much, because meditation can be used in a relaxation exercise, in a deeper exercise, and a still yet deeper exercise, and maybe even the ultimate deep exercise. But to start with, if you're looking to have a calmer life, to find some way to learn some relaxation exercise where it's just you and calm, and you learn to be quiet, and you learn to maybe a little more focused and one pointed on, even if it's a candle or something like that, that's to your advantage. Now, if you can do that for a while, it will increase your hunger in the inner calm. And the more you're magnetized to inner calm, the more your external life will find its way to calm. And the more your decisions will not be so critically winning and losing and crisis and pleasure. I certainly have found this. This isn't my advice to other people only. I've found this for myself, that the further that I go into leaning the weight of my life on something other than the really transitory externals, the more peaceful my life is. And I'm not in any way a recluse. I do things. I travel around the world, although now I'm a little antsy over the COVID. I'm a little getting a little bit there, but I'm still okay. And like where I live and I like what I do, and I like having these talks over Zoom and Facebook Live, and it's okay, but it wouldn't be okay if it was everything to me. And I sincerely sympathize with people who are constricted severely in their lives and don't have anything else to do. Even reading, not so much adventure stories that help you pass the time, but all the incredible books that have been written over the years by quality people, quality subjects, and cause people to think about things and explore things, even in their thoughts, because we can't go out so much anymore. There's so much to life to grab onto, even though you can't go out. But as I say, I do sincerely sympathize with people who are locked in and don't have those outlets. But I would advise, this is a great time. It's a gift of a time, and even though it's painful for people, to go and to look, to read, listen to music, play music, anything that will cause you some quietness inside, and maybe even learn to meditate.
Um, do we have any more questions at this point? Well, please, we're coming to a close. I'm not saying we're done, but we'll be coming to a close shortly. So if you have any questions, please put them out now. I'm going to read a short quote of Justin's that actually does relate to what he just spoke about, and this is it. One of the reasons we talk to ourselves constantly is because we are always on guard that sometime soon we will be performing one of our acts. Naturalness doesn't take preparation, but performance does. So we are perpetually rehearsing with inner dialogue.
Yeah, that's true and painful.
True and painful.
It's true and painful. Yeah, it's one of those things you said that somebody used to say, but there is a response to it, because our life is very compartmentalized. It doesn't have to be quite as compartmentalized, but it is, and we always want to know what compartment we're about to be in. Like for now, it appears that for me right now, that I'm in the compartment of being a speaker and being somebody who's interviewed, or being somebody in a discussion, and this is who I'm being. Now, it happens to be that I'm wearing this coat, which I rarely get to wear, and I wanted to wear, and I opened a lot of the windows around here because I wanted to wear it, because I never get to wear it, and it's fun for me to wear it. Don't want to impress you that I have a Brooks Brothers coat and that I'm a businessman or anything. That's a lot of bullshit. I'm wearing it because it's fun for me to wear it, and I never get to wear it. And I have exposure to people every day, at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, and we do things together. We travel together, and this is me. This is me. You're getting. This isn't my compartment of spiritual expert or meditation expert or synthesis expert. I don't live that compartment, and you don't really have to either. But the first part of it is that you have to recognize that you are. When you walk into a room, you want to know, who should I be in this moment? Is this a family situation and I talk family talk? Is this a business situation and I do business talk? Is this, am I being pulled over by a cop? Do I have to do that kind of talk? And to recognize the realities of the situation, but not necessarily be governed by them. Now, certainly in the situation with the pulled over by a cop because you were driving too fast, you recognize that you have to talk to the cop respectively, and you have to do that. And you don't say to the cop, what's a big deal? Big deal, so what? Everybody does it. You wouldn't say that. You might say that to your friend, but so you have to know the realities, but you don't have to play the parts if you don't have to play the parts. And our programming is that the opposite. You have to always know the part you're about to be in, so you have to rehearse that part, and that rehearsing requires you to talk to yourself about rehearsing that part, and it's a tremendous burden, and I don't see that it's necessary. See that it takes some effort to get to circumvent or to go through. But I think that that's really important. And I appreciate you reading that quote that I put on Twitter, which is something that I have fun doing. And because it really speaks to the human condition right now, that we rarely get to be ourselves, so that we want and desire a place. Where can I go to be myself? But that place that we go to be ourselves, if something changes in that scenario, then we have to be another ourselves. So the only place we can be ourselves is really when we're locked in a room by ourselves. And that's not even good, because most of us have very little experience in that. So we turn on the computer. Yeah. Okay. But I do, before we wind up, I want to say something too, because I know there's some venture capitalists out there and some people who, and I want to give my, my outsider tip. And it's not
just a brief insert, Justin. We have two more questions that have come in
okay,
since you've been talking.
this doesn't have to be the end, but I do want to say, because it's important to me. I have, before I went on here, I did a little research, and I looked at the women who are in head of state positions around the world. And I knew, of course, of Angela Merkel and maybe a couple of others, but there was a very long list of prime ministers and of presidents of countries that are now, that are female, and how history has changed in that way. And it's also possible, and I think very, very possibly, our next presidential, not this one, but our next one, could very well be between two women. So we won't have the question, is a woman ever going to be the president? And so many, if people don't know this, that a huge percentage of the board of directors of S&P 500 companies are women. Huge. It's something not that smaller than that. CFOs, chief financial officers, are women in so many Fortune 500 companies, that women must be recognized now. Now, it's interesting because people of color, and I'm trying very hard not to be politically incorrect here, there are places in the world where people of color have countries of color, so they have opportunities, but women have never had their own country, have never had the opportunities. And this is the time to have them. And this is the time, my advice for entrepreneurs, for female entrepreneurs, is get it going. And my advice for venture capitalists is look for enterprises that are started by women, because that is the future.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Now let me get to these questions here. Okay, so it's a two-part question, I think. Justin, how do you feel about people wanting to make a living from wellness? I've heard you don't pay for teaching spirituality. Is that just a function of you've made your money elsewhere? And the person follows up, I ask because I'm desiring to be in the industry, the wellness industry, and have anxiety about the crossover. In other words, I'd like to be a generous servant, but I also need to support myself. And I'd love to marry the two, but there is stress about the marriage of generosity and self-earning. It's a complex situation.
It is a complex situation, and I think whoever you are, the questioner, you're off to a good start, because the questioning is the most important thing. Now, there is certainly a value to people in the wellness industry. I did a really incredible interview with an incredible woman who started a business in Ireland and is very successful, and I was very impressed the way she handles it. And I know that there is a way to do that, but awareness is the way to do that. Awareness that it is a challenge. Awareness that there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. Awareness that you constantly ask yourself the question, Is this something that should be equal to money? Is money connected to this? And I think that that of course the physicians industry has showed us exactly the way it shouldn't be. And if we use that as a model, that then we can really see that if it's necessary to have people skilled in these ways, and it is necessary, that those people include consciousness in their activities. It's not just the activity and the healing, but it's the consciousness of the activity. Now, will it ever be simple? No, it will not be simple. Will it be a challenge? Yes, it will be a challenge. But I think if the awareness is there, that there is some essence to it that is a challenge, and that you will never escape that essence, and you will never be free of that essence, but you will try to create a synthesis, then you'll do your best.
Fair enough. Another question came in as you were speaking. This one actually has my name, Darrell and Jay, or Justin. I have two clients with severe fear over the next 30 days based on the November elections. Both are of one political party. Any thoughts on what I may say at our next meeting? The amount under management is 25 million. So I don't know if that's 25 million total, or each of the clients has about 25 million they're dealing with. And I would probably, as someone who's faced this situation before, I think the use of the word severe fear rather than just fear is kind of important, because everybody has a little fear about what the elections may or may not bring to the marketplace. But any thoughts on what I may say at the next meeting? I'll start with you, and
Okay.
I'll give it a shot too.
You should definitely give it a shot,
Okay.
because my view might be a little Pollyannic, if you know that term.
Okay. Okay.
And my view is that this country and this economy has had so many ups and downs, and the knowledge of history is really important when these things happen. Really important, because we have withstood wars, we have withstood depressions, we have withstood so many things. We have had corrupt people, we have well-meaning people, we have had people in positions of power that were self-serving, we've had people in positions of power that really wanted to do the right thing for other people, we have had patriotic people, we have had every base has been touched. And if you read history, you read about Grover Cleveland, you read about Calvin Coolidge, you read about Thomas Jefferson, you read about, and all the people that had to do with it, whether it was the Vanderbilts or the Mellons or all those people that were involved in the building of the finance, and Peter Stuyvesant, and in the development of New York. I think it's really valuable. I would advise those people to read some history, and you will feel some security that we can withstand whatever it's called. We could withstand whoever this person is that you might have had trouble with in the past 4 years. We can withstand whoever you might have trouble with in the next 4 years. We can withstand that. The human spirit is very strong, and it will fluctuate in its ability to express itself up and down, little, up and down a lot, up and down a little, up and down a lot. But if you have severe anxiety about that, then, like we talked about before, adjust your investments to compensate for that severe anxiety. But my feeling is that you should calm down. The newspapers are meant to get you to read it. It will get you to go way up, get you to go way down. Hooray for our side, boo for the other side, boo for our side, boo for the other. It will get you to do that. put the newspapers aside a little bit and read some history, and you'll get a much broader view of the nature of economics.
In very difficult times, just as Justin said, markets go up and down, everything's temporary. And to spend much time worrying about it, or maybe even any time worrying about it, is wasted time. Live your life, find happiness in your outer world and your inner world, and move forward. Now, one thing I'd like to interject a question here that maybe we've skipped over. We have a lot of very competent people listening today in so many ways. But one thing we've avoided is people who are having really, really deep problems emotionally or mentally or whatever. We haven't really gone there. And I know that Justin, in his past, and I think in his current life, had techniques and technology for dealing with negative emotions. And people that feel that they're and I'm not talking about clinical depression or clinical anxiety. I mean, there are many things that people need psychiatrists for and doctors for. I'm not going there, but there's something to be said for at least lowering the volume on your negative emotions and negative thoughts. It's not just, I need to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I need to make a peanut butter. I got to remember to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Some thoughts are pretty dark and are constantly revolving, or just a feeling of anger or a feeling of jealousy. These come into us, and I'd like Justin to spend 2 minutes talking about any way to deal with those really negative emotions and really negative thoughts.
Yeah, well, I do have some methods. I've never really been successful, and I've never put the methods out in a mass way. Maybe at some time I will, but I haven't done that yet. But I definitely agree with what you're saying and know that there are people in that situation. And I know that maybe it's like a car that's careening down a road, and the thoughts are doing that, and you want to steer somewhere. Well, you definitely shouldn't steer to the edge of the cliff. You should steer toward the cliff, and it might be a little rough rubbing along the cliff, but it's better than going off the cliff. So if you have a choice of thinking about, you do have a choice of thinking about things that are super difficult. In fact, if you recognize and you have some awareness that you're actually nurturing those thoughts, sometimes you might even find yourself waking up in the first thing in the morning, and you really haven't had a thought yet, and your first thought is, what problem do I have to think about? You're trying to generate negativity for yourself. You recognize how self-generated it is. And I think that's a very big step in the right direction, is recognizing how self-generated it is. There are certainly things outside of yourself that are troublesome. But I have said over and over again, and I've said on my tweets and on Twitter, and I've said in the books I've written, that somebody can pluck a string, but nobody can pluck your string. So only you can pluck your string, and really recognizing that that's for anybody to recognize, that if you really look at it, no matter, now, of course, if somebody does some physical violence to you, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people can have bad thoughts about you, people can say bad things about you, people can have bad opinions about you. But if you don't allow that to disturb you, if you don't take that in, if you don't pluck your own string of negativity, it can't be plucked, because nobody can reach inside you and pluck that. That is absolutely the case. I have proved that over and over again, and there is no going back on that proof. Nobody outside yourself can pluck that string in you, only you can do it yourself. And awareness will erode those negative emotions. So not eliminate them, but it will decrease them to the point that you have mild unpleasantness from time to time, and certainly there are. And maybe it will erode it enough to the point that you can actually start dealing with the things outside of yourself that cause trouble, that are causing trouble, from a position other than blaming them, because blame is just a product of thinking that they're plucking your string. And if you get rid of them, you'll get rid of that pain. But that pain is self-generated, and it can be realized that you can alter that for yourself. I don't know how to convey a tool that will specifically do that to you, because I work with just really a small number of people. I've never been able to work with a large number of people. I don't know how. I have books which say this stuff in a lot more detail. Whether they could be helpful or not helpful, I don't really know the answer to that question. But I know there is nothing that's more helpful than awareness. And that awareness that we're talking about is the awareness that you can be your own best friend and you can be your own worst enemy. But nobody else can do those things to you. So blame and all those pains that come from blame are not a requirement.
Would you say that um, awareness of the negativity itself is kind of the beginning of the erosion of being in that maelstrom?
Absolutely, absolutely. If I've talked to people, I've talked at gatherings, and people come up to me after and say, "No, I'm fine. I don't need any of that. I'm fine. I'm fine." Well, the only thing I could say to them is, "Well, you're fortunate if you're fine." And I suspect probably they're able either to manipulate their situation well enough that they're not confronted by things that would cause them trouble. That's a possibility. There are some percentage of the people, it's very small, that will circumvent every difficulty until the final difficulty, which nobody circumvents. And but up to that point, there are people that some number mathematically will do that. Some people will hit every difficulty. Some people will hit no difficulties, and most other people will be in the case of the way we are. We get some, we get some ups, we get some downs. But recognizing that, I totally agree that you have difficulties that aren't crisis. They aren't even additional. They're not composite difficulties. They're moments of difficulty where you have a moment of embarrassment and a moment of anger and a moment of difficulty and a moment of anxiety. And if you realize that these moments are maybe even seamless, you might not be saying that you don't have difficulty and you don't need to alter that difficulty. So I agree completely with what Darrell's saying. Is really the first recognition is that you may not have trauma. You may have trauma, but you may not have trauma. But you do have difficulty. It's just small, and it might be even frequent. And if you recognize that, you might find to alleviate those mini blames that you have. I'll give you a very quick example. I just tweeted this the other day. There's a very short expression, and it could even be called a tool that I'm giving you over the internet. It's called "The rock is hard, my ass is soft." The rock is hard, my ass is soft. Now, if you blame the rock for your butt pain, then you always are pointing out there and seeing the trouble as something outside of yourself. If you recognize that you're used to sitting on pillows, you've never been out in nature, and now you're sitting on a rock and you're blaming the rock, it's really that your ass is soft. It's not that the rock is hard. And if you can apply that to all the blame situations in your life, every time you point it outside yourself, and in small things, just like that, not in trauma, but in small things, your life situations will be altered. So what I said that I don't do, I just did.
Hey, also, I was thinking that what I heard you, part of what I heard you say is that some people have negativity going on inside of them, but they're asymptomatic.
Yeah, it's true. It's our current
I'm the
term.
only one laughing, I guess.
It's our current term. I'm
Yes,
gonna adopt that one for in my lexicon, and I
okay.
may not even credit you with it.
You don't need to. You don't have to.
But I might.
Okay. Well, so we don't have any more questions or comments. Justin, please feel free to close by just sharing whatever you want to share before you go. And if I get a question in the interim, I'll yell it out or whatever. But otherwise, why don't we close with just you sharing whatever you want to end it.
Yeah, I think people should know that the only reason I do this is because I have some ideas that are of value. I don't sell them. I started writing them not that long ago, a few years ago. I wrote something some years ago, but then I haven't written for a long time. But I do see that these ideas of value, like the idea that I just mentioned. I don't think I'm of value personally and that everybody has to meet me, but I think the ideas are of value. And that's why I put them out there. And that's why I'm available. And that's why I have the books. And that's why I have the talks. And if you ever want to get one of the books, you can. If you can't afford it, let me know. And if you want to look at the tweets I do or the Facebook I do, I just started doing that 2 months ago. I'm a neophyte to social media, but I'm enjoying it because I'm being somewhat successful at getting these ideas out there that I think some are, you may find in other places, but some I think you might not find in other places. And I would like to think, since I value literature so much and I've read books that go back hundreds of years and I valued them, that maybe in hundreds of years, somebody will trip over something that I said or I did, and I'll be in that category, and I would be very honored to be there. Thanks, Darrell, for making this happen.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.